Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to CIO Leadership Live. I'm your host, Maryfran Johnson, CEO of Maryfran Johnson Media. Twice a month, we produce this video show and podcast with the generous support of my friends at CIO.com and the CIO Executive Council. We're streaming live to you right now on LinkedIn and on our CIO channel on YouTube. And because we are streaming to you right now, we encourage any of our faithful viewers, our alert viewers that are dialing in, to join the conversation in the chat with questions of your own. We have editors watching that space, and they will pass those questions along to me, and I will do my best to pass those along to my esteemed guest today, who is Matt Lasmanis. He is the Chief Technology and Innovation Officer at Sage Therapeutics. Next month will actually mark Matt's 3-year anniversary at this Cambridge, Mass-based biotech company, which he joined in November of 2020. Matt's mission there is focused on creating and leveraging a digital-driven approach to data analytics, to digital health and biomarkers, AI and advanced analytics, cybersecurity, and of course, omni-channel customer experiences. Sage is a clinical stage biopharmaceutical company developing new therapies to treat people with debilitating disorders of the brain, including mood, cognition, and behavior issues. Earlier this year, the company received FDA approval for a new treatment to help women with postpartum depression. Before he joined Sage, Matt spent 20 years with GlaxoSmithKline, most recently serving as the Chief Digital and Technology Officer for GSK's multi-billion-dollar U.S. affiliate, where he led a team of over 500 internal and external staff. Among his many roles at GSK over those 2 decades were in digital and technology leadership in R&D, oncology, and specialty biopharmaceuticals. And then before GSK, Matt led the digital platforms team at HarperCollins Publishing. Matt, welcome. It's great to have you here today.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
And I know that we're speaking to you actually from Cambridge or in Boston. You're actually having an all-hands meeting today, so you are nearby.
Yeah, that's right. We have an all-hands today of my team, and really we try to use our facilities for what they're good for our leadership sessions as well as collaboration. And we also have a very flexible kind of remote working model as well during our normal course of business. So we call it Sage Flex.
Great. So it's another way to show digital leadership, isn't it?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. Now, let's talk just a little bit about leaving, a pretty enormous company at GSK and doing that for an emerging biotech, biopharma company. Why was that a good move for you? And why is this such a transformative time in the field of biopharmaceuticals?
Yeah, I think it's a transformative time in biopharma. It was also a kind of a personal journey for me, Maryfran. The folks that know me know I had somebody very close to me pass away from Alzheimer's disease a number of years ago. And that really taught me a lot of things about neuroscience. And I kind of said to myself when I was looking for my next role, I really wanted to try to give back and make an impact in brain health because it touched my life. I know it's touched many people's lives out there. And I really feel like the next decade, 2 decades, is really going to be the era of the brain where we attempt to understand these disease states and really try to drive an impact for patients. And so Sage Therapeutics is a leading company in brain health and really aligned with my personal mission. And that was a big part of why I'm on the journey with Sage, trying to make an impact in brain health. Yeah.
Well, and it's pretty hard not to make an impact when you're there essentially while the field is still green. You don't have legacy ERP systems to dismantle. You don't have 500 people in IT to lead there. So what has that been like for you as you're not even a CIO, you're a CTIO, technology and innovation. So how has that been different?
Yeah, it's been a really exciting journey. I think when I joined Sage a number of years ago, about 3 years ago, almost to the day now, really the mission was I guess simple and complex in a way, I guess you could say. So Sage had an IT team, very skilled IT operational team, supporting kind of the foundations of the business. But what the company was interested in doing was, to your point, as the field of neuroscience is evolving, making sure that they build digital data analytics, AI into the business model of the company. And I think at that point in time, it was the optimal time to do that. Had they done it earlier, probably would have been a little too early. Had they done it later, would have been too late. So really the goal was to make sure that we built, the right capability set and the right foundations to help the company scale for the future. I think it's really been helpful for me, because when you run a large organization and a large company, you develop a set of leadership skills that are geared towards that kind of a macro environment. And I think it's, growing my leadership set into something that's a more emerging, almost startup kind of company, you could say, has really helped from, developing agility, focus, pivoting, and making sure you can react quickly as new developments and the company grows. And so I think it's been great for me to kind of leverage my corporate leadership skills in a bit of a smaller setting and drive a strategic impact, essentially across the whole company. Because as you say, my role isn't just tech, it's capability driven. So everything we're doing from a capability perspective, transformation perspective, it's all within my set of responsibilities. So.
Great. Okay, let's pivot up to that 30,000-foot view of the industry. I was doing some research on the biotech industry and came across one source talking about the 13 best industries to invest in this year in 2023. And leading that list was biotech. And right behind it was artificial intelligence. So let's talk about what sort of impact you've seen on Sage's business and on the customers during these past 3 years, especially. And tell us also a little bit more about who those customers are.
Sure. Yeah. So I think to your point, it's just a really exciting time to be in biotech. So it doesn't surprise me at all that the list that you looked up, investing in growth of biotech, investing in growth of AI. To me, what I'm very curious about is kind of the combination of those two things. So kind of not just making it biotech, but making it bio plus tech, right? Like making sure that we're leveraging the best of those, both of those things and bringing them together to drive, innovation across the overall value chain and across the overall business model. So as you say, I think it's an exciting time because it's not just about, innovating in the lab anymore. That's absolutely critically important. But it's also about making sure that we innovate across the entirety of our business model and really using the digital plus the science innovation kind of that we do. And that's what's been exciting about Sage. And I think to your point about the external world, my team and our capabilities do that across the business model. So everything, to your point, from how we think about commercialization of a new product and channels of engagement with customers, through how we handle our clinical development processes, to even how we think about early stage research, right? And how we understand new designs of new molecules. All of those things are very data intensive processes. And now we really have the skills and the tool sets to make the best use of that data to drive value for the company, and by proxy, driving value and impact for the patients out there. So I'm biased. I'm a life science person. I was in a different industry before life science, but to me personally, I couldn't imagine a more exciting industry and spot to be, specifically in brain health as well at the moment.
Well, and I think too, for the average public member, life science and brain science probably sounds like they're pretty much in the same basket. But when we talked earlier, you were saying that the brain health space is actually quite different. Explain that a little bit more. Why is it so different?
It's very different, and not to get into a lot of the technical minutia of it, but if we just stay at a high level, throughout my career, I've done a lot of work in oncology and specialty diseases and different kinds of things where the biomarkers, if you will, it's a technical term, but the biology of it is well characterized, well known. The ability to assay and understand those things is really well known. Well, the brain is a bit of a different space. There are certain There are certain diseases of the brain that we can only understand by asking questions and getting responses, or using what are called validated instruments, which are basically responses from patients. There are many disease states where that's the case, and there are many where you can't actually get a biologically derived test at the moment that's going to tell you something very quantitative biologically about the disease state. So it's different than in some ways a traditional one. But on the other hand, I think that that creates the environment where we can actually progress in brand health over the next decade or two and actually drive towards an improvement in quantification. And for the tech folks out there, what does that mean? Well, that means that if you're interested in brain health and you're interested in technology and you're interested in data, there's a lot of opportunity for you to get involved in the process and help with that evolution of brain health moving forward, where we're going to be fusing the digital technologies kind of plus the science. That's why it's so exciting.
And it's interesting you say that. Listening to you talk, it almost sounds like you sound more like you're on the science team than on the technology team, really. And it's reminding me of how broad the role of CIO and Chief Technology and Innovation Officers has become. Is that very similar to the way you worked at GSK, or is this something new and exciting to you, having joined Sage, that you're so involved in all of that?
I would say it's more in the new and exciting kind of bucket in many ways. So I think, my role, while we do tech work, while there is a quote unquote IT component of my role, it's a much more business oriented role, where we're thinking about where is the company going in the future? What's the strategy of the company? And importantly, like, what are the capabilities and outcomes that we need to deliver to move that strategy forward? So Maryfran, as you know, we don't use the words IT at Sage.
That was going to be my next question. You don't call it the IT department. Tell us about that and what you do call it.
Right. So we call it digital and enterprise capabilities. We call it DEC for sure. And, it's one of those things where words are both important and unimportant, I guess, in a way, right?
No. You're preaching in the wrong choir. I think words and the way we use language is very important.
Right. And so, the words you use to frame something kind of tells you a little bit about the mindset of what you're trying to do, right? And so when we were thinking about the future of the team and the future of what we're trying to do, really our goal was to be a capabilities partner across the organization, where we were driving transformation across the business process. Yes, we still do IT work, all the hardware, software, all those things. But really the main growth of the team has been in digital data analytics capabilities and really driving that on behalf of the company. That's what's been so exciting. And that was a very, very intentional thing that we do. And so what's interesting to me is that if you ask a new employee when they come into Sage, if we have an IT department, they'll probably tell you no, because they've never heard the words IT at Sage. So we have DEC, we have a digital organization, but we don't have an IT organization. And like I said, IT work is important. It's just it's not how we frame our partnership with the company or our leadership at the company. So.
Okay. Well, and that actually pivots nicely to my next question about your own marching orders. And I mean, we've talked a little bit about why you decided to join the company and how this is a personal as well as a professional mission for you. But coming into the role, what did the CEO and the rest of the leadership team, what did they want you to do for them in terms of creating a digital business model? Because we mentioned it's a green field, so there's all kinds of exciting things you could do, and also lots of exciting mistakes you could make. So what were your marching orders coming in?
I think that part was great for me. So I think as anybody who's probably listening to this call knows, the ability to go on a digital journey with any company, skills are important, capabilities are important, but at the end of the day, leadership is critical. And I think what I found at Sage was a group of leaders all the way up in the highest levels of the company that understood that infusing the organization with these kinds of skills and techniques and platforms was actually critical to the ability to grow and scale. That was very well understood, which is really exciting for me as a new employee coming into the company. I think the part where I fit in, I guess you could say, is how do we get there? Like we know we know point B is where we need to get to, but how do we do that? And what are the things that we choose to do? And importantly, what are the things we choose not to do? I think that element, absolutely critical, because the one thing that I'm always coaching teams on is digital is not about chasing shiny objects. It's not about chasing problems that don't matter. Digital at its core, data analytics at its core, is about what is the company trying to do? What are they trying to accomplish? And how does that digital skill set and capability skill set fit into transforming a firm to achieve what it's attempting to do and maybe drive what it's attempting to do? So that was kind of the role scope, I guess you could say, coming into it, and that's what we did. So within, I'd say 90 days of coming in, I'd actually met everybody in the company within 90 days, which was amazing. I couldn't have done that.
Something you can't do when there's more than 120,000 employees.
I couldn't have done that if I tried, right? And that was super, super great. And then, we just really thought about what was that journey and what was that roadmap. And, interestingly, what talent did we need to bring into the team to be able to achieve that? And I think where we are today, to your point, is there wasn't a lot of legacy. That was a huge positive. We didn't have to fight through legacy to do that. And so now we've really established a new model that is the basis for how the company operates. And now we're thinking about, okay, what's the next evolution, which funnily enough is the all hands I'm in today with my team, thinking about what the next evolution looks like.
What can you tell us about that? I feel like I should take advantage of the fact that you're there at an all hands. What are you being asked? Have there been any surprises, any good or bad surprises so far?
No, I don't think, not too many surprises. I think what we're talking about with my organization today is really thinking through, when I got to Sage, like I said, it was that IT operations model. It was running really well. So the analogy, like you touch the button, it works, right? Yeah. Awesome. The last couple of years have been about how do we transform how we lead as a business? How do we develop new capabilities? How do we incubate the model? This new, 2.0, 3.0, I lost track on the versions at this point.
I know. I feel like at this point we should be at 4.0.
I'm going to say something like that. Really, what we're thinking about now is it's aligning our structure with our strategy, in essence. And so what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is really focusing in on the core platforms and products that we now own for the business, because we've built those now over the last couple of years, and really infusing in a standard way product-oriented operating model across my whole team, right? So there are some of my teams, my digital team, et cetera, works very much in a product-oriented operating model already. Other teams, a little bit less so. And so this next evolution is making sure that, from a structure point of view, from a strategy, that all those things are intertwined and that we're driving a consistent kind of product and capability-oriented model, like across my whole team. That's kind of the next evolution.
Yeah. Well, and I know we're going to talk a little bit more too about what it means to be a commercial CIO. That's a conversation I've had with a lot of previous guests on the show. But we have a question from our alert watching audience. Starting with a compliment. Great thoughts, Matt. So you need to keep that up, right? Now, can you share one key digital initiative that you kicked off and one that you discontinued?
Well, it's been more, like I said, there wasn't a lot of legacy when I got here. I would say there was essentially zero legacy. So again, very unlike I won't use the word traditional, probably not the right word, but very much like the normal corporate environments I've typically operated in, where refocusing kind of away from the legacy and transforming the legacy, not the case here, very greenfield. I think, as I said, it was more about choosing what to do versus choosing what not to do.
Okay.
That was really the key thing. Very different. My previous roles could talk a lot about legacy, but that really wasn't the case. And maybe just to use a very different example to what the person is asking. Again, I'm not going to talk about digital widgets and that kind of stuff, but one of the things that we realized, and it goes to the broader scope of the role, when we were thinking about the roadmap and thinking about the fact that it wasn't just transforming my team, it was transforming the whole organization, was that we didn't have a transformation capability. There wasn't a transformation person you could go talk to and say, hey, how do we transform things? And like
more that you were creating and building them out more than transforming, right?
Correct. Okay. Right. And so like a lot of things in biotech, when you ask that question of who's that person, well, the answer is almost usually it's you, right? So yeah. Along with my other roles, becoming kind of our transformation officer was a component of that. So we actually created what we called our transformation office, mostly staffed with external staff. It wasn't a lot of internal people, but we really used that as the basis to pull together all of the different threads that we were pulling on digital and capability development and transformation across the company, and bring them together into one coherent capability area that is actually in my team within the tech organization, and actually use that as a way to coordinate and drive impact across everything that we were doing from a transformation angle across Sage, which to me was exceptionally powerful. Like, I don't think, had we not taken that step, we probably wouldn't be where we are today with a full-fledged digital organization, data analytics organization with a core set of platforms, ops, cyber, all those things were components of our transformation journey. And I think recognizing that you need transformation in and of itself as a capability, and recognizing that we needed that skill set was core. So that was one example, one thing that we realized we needed, and we started very, very much at the beginning of the journey. So, was there anything that you did get started as a digital initiative that it became apparent that it was too early or not going to have the best results? Or it's always tricky getting CIOs to talk about, well, what did you try that didn't work? But in a lot of ways, that can be so educational and important to your colleagues and your peers in IT leadership. Yeah, what I would say there, Maryfran, is taking a little bit of a different example to what you're describing, because we work across the whole company. Yeah, it means we do part of what we do is within research and development, right? And inherently, for those that know biotech and pharma, R&D is it's the place where you're doing development work, research.
Yeah, it's your sandbox.
It's your sandbox. It's your experiments. And so what's been important for us is, as we're thinking about new things like novel digital biomarkers, incorporation of digital health technology into our clinical trials, it's been really critical that we don't get out ahead of what it is we're attempting to do. So as an example, there have been cases where we've thought, hey, this piece of technology would work for this product. This piece of technology would work for this program. But it's been very important not to get too far ahead of that, and make sure that what we're attempting to do is tracking with the actual development program itself. So there have been ideas, there have been things that we've progressed that we've said, actually, well, we're going to pause that right now because that's not the right thing for the program. So that it's my point there is whenever you're doing innovation and experimental work, it's just important to have the mindset of maintaining flexibility and don't trick yourself into thinking like, hey, I'm working on this. This will be a permanent thing in the future that we're absolutely always maintain that flexibility. If we've gotten to this point, is this still the right decision?
Okay. Well, and let's auger in a little bit more and talk about the scope and the focus of your DEC team today, your digital and enterprise capabilities. It's not just internal folks, because the team is relatively small, a few dozen people in IT. And
that's a fair estimate.
All right. So how do you have it structured? How are you managing all of that?
Yeah, great question. So like I said, our thoughts about the structure and the operating model of DEC follow our strategy, right? And so I'm not going to shock you to hear that one of our core teams is what we call digital innovation, right? Like that group didn't exist when I got here. It's very important to how we commercialize new products, as an example. So within digital innovation, part of that team focuses on omni-channel customer experience, making sure we have the right platforms and capabilities to launch new products in a digital world, digital first world. That's one part of that. And then the other part of that team works with our early science teams and our R&D teams, trying to figure out how do we fuse digital with the science to make sure we're maximizing outcomes, right? So that's it's kind of two components of that. That's digital innovation. The second team is data and analytics. So that's you have one data analytics tech organization across the entire company. That's everything from early research through development, through commercialization, through G&A. And they work on all the cross-company capabilities that we have in advanced analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, et cetera.
Yeah.
And then our third one is operations. And so what we've done there is really combining all the capabilities that we deliver for the company from an operations mindset. And so that's everything from how we run our value chain and our supply and our clinical trials to our G&A functions, our tech infrastructure, all those kinds of things. And so we have those three teams, and our strategy is digital, data analytics, and operations. And so you can see we're matching our capability set with our strategy. The fourth component really underlies all those things, and that's our cybersecurity and trust team. And so, from my perspective, I'm a very big believer in that area. I think cybersecurity, I know everyone believes it's important. It is critically important. I actually think it's an enabler of the future. I think companies that really build a very strong capability in cyber and trust will see beneficial outcomes, elsewhere in the company. So that area reports directly to me as well. That's our fourth spot. So.
And are any one of those areas strictly done on an outsourced basis where you work with a third-party provider rather than trying to build up internal capability?
Right. So not surprisingly, the way that we view that is where we need expertise that we believe is core to driving that. Those folks are in my team. They're employees of the company. Where we have more commodity operations, and importantly for us as an emerging company, where we can get scale faster, those are the areas that we outsource. And so we have a balance, but we do a heavy amount of utilization of external resources because of volume and scale. We're an emerging company, but we do, our emphasis on our internal talent is very much where we feel that we need the internal, expertise. So
Well, it's interesting when you were talking about the three main areas of the innovation, the digital initiatives, and then the operational. That sounded to me almost like the classic plan, build, run that so many IT leaders have done for so long. Is this the modern version of that, or am I missing a really big piece when I say that?
It's I guess you could say it's an evolution of it in a sense. I think I think the classic version of it, though, would tell you in your run, you would have all of your operational services in there, or even all of your support services and stuff. That's not the case. So we have a product aligned operating model. So within digital, that handles everything there is to handle about digital in the spaces that they own. Data analytics is the same. When I'm saying operations here, what I'm referring to is they manage the capabilities for all of the operational components of the company. That's how we think about it from a business perspective. But I guess you could say it's kind of like a modern evolution of what you're describing.
Okay. And feel free to declare baloney. If I say, I
like the idea.
You can say, well, no, because I've heard a lot of CIOs recently have talked to me about the people process technology formula, which, it's kind of nice that all the classics don't get thrown over, right? As we get into a new age.
All that's old will be new again, right? And I think,
I know, right?
The people process technology part is still important. That in my opinion, anyway, I feel like it's still an important part of the model because something like I said, I coach teams all the time on is it's not just about getting the tech right. That's a good bar. That's an okay bar. But if the tech's right and people don't know how to use it, if the tech's right and it's not impacting a strategic area of what we're trying to do as a company, if the tech's right and it's not driving outcomes for the people that we serve out there in the external world, well, that's great that the tech's right, but it's not achieving what we intended to achieve from a strategy perspective. And so I think that's if frameworks like people process technology or other frameworks help teams to get into that outcomes-driven strategic mindset, then they're fine. Then they're fine. If they're helpful, they're fine. I just think it's about getting to that mindset that's important, though.
Well, it's interesting because I think 10 or 15 years ago, a lot of CIOs would have told you that people process technology and it's important in that area. But I think it was more the reverse. It was more that we talked about technology, and then there was a lot of business process. And then oh yeah, and you need great talent. I feel like in the last 5 years, especially as a result with the pandemic and all the uproar around that, is the people aspects is that there's been just a whole mind shift, not just for CIOs, I think for businesses as well. But it really feels like it's reflected now in our next topic on the list here, talking about your digital talent strategy. That's something you have to have that. And I know you have a very direct plan where you go attacking that, the team health, the development planning, foundations, all that sort of stuff. Talk us through that.
This is something, you're really talking my language now. This is something I am just absolutely, completely excited about. I think one of my observations, to your point, is people process technology. It's the people, right? the talent you have, the people around you, the culture that you develop, those are the things that are going to drive success. That's absolutely core. And so, as part of our transformation and part of what we've been thinking about, we've really been, and probably a pretty big component of my leadership energy has been in our digital talent strategy. And that starts with step one, which is the foundations, right? Are we hiring the right people in the first place? Are we retaining them? Do they have a development plan? Do they understand their career path? Do we have the right career paths? All the kind of basics, but putting a kind of digital lens on it, right? And that was sort of step one, and kind of building out that component. The second phase of it, or second category, I should say, is really our digital workforce plan. And what we mean by that is we've picked very specific domains within our skill set to say, where do we need to develop new talent, develop new leadership, and how are we going to do that? So I'll give you an example. Within our cybersecurity space, it was one of the first digital workforce plans that we put in place in the company. And what happens there is we identify folks within our own organization. They are excited about cyber, but they might work in a completely different space. So we recently had an employee who was on the help desk who was excited and curious about cyber, and she was admitted to our cyber workforce plan. She got a certain level of training in cybersecurity, a certain level of certification. She also had the opportunity to work on a collaborative project that she led with our cybersecurity team at Sage. And so she got practical experience. And then she was able to originally go back to her help desk work, but also take on tasks and assignments in the future in cyber. Well, now that's led to that person actually becoming part of our cybersecurity team. So you can see how all of that helps resilience, all of that helps with our workforce motivation, and it helps the person on their personal kind of career growth and trajectory. And so there's a couple other domains like that where we're going to have a digital workforce plan. And then the third part is our digital leadership development area. And that's pretty much two components. One is selecting people from my team that we put on, very specific kind of mentorship experiences to develop their digital and leadership acumen from a succession point of view, that kind of stuff. And then the second one, which we'll be doing more work on next year, is how do we help develop digital leadership across the company? And so taking people from supply chain operations or from clinical development or other places that have had not too much experience in digital, but are curious about it and excited about it. And how do we have them have a similar approach of developing their kind of digital leadership acumen? What does that do? That helps drive a digital culture across the company. So that's next year there. We haven't done too much about this year.
Do you figure that out yourselves internally, or do you bring in external providers, like for, a curriculum of some sort?
I think that depends on the company that you're in, to be honest. I think there's a lot of space for external people. that can bring new, fresh ideas to you and help you out.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's also a space for, you've got a lot of smart people on your team that have a lot of experience, and they've done it for long enough to know what you shouldn't do, right?
Okay.
Right, and we've had a mix of both. I would say in our digital workforce or our digital talent strategy itself, it's been formed by a lot of great ideas from my team, honestly, and
Okay.
with a little bit of outside input, but a lot of it has come from the leaders on my team talking about what they think would work and trying it out and getting people to experience it. And I'd say the reception we've had to it has been phenomenal. It really has. The feedback that we're getting has been great. So
well, and it was the wonderful example about the help desk employee who ends up in cybersecurity. Give us another example. Where else has that worked?
Yeah, we have a digital workforce plan in infrastructure that we're working on at the moment. And so that particular example is taking folks that have not too much experience from an infrastructural perspective and giving them exposure to things like cloud services and cloud platforms.
Yeah.
The one I'm very excited about that we haven't done yet, that's a piece for next year, is we want to take the same approach in data analytics. And so bringing people kind of out of their comfort zone and mentoring them in data science and data platforms.
Yeah.
I've had the benefit of that in my career. And I know that when I see a business question or a business problem that someone out there is asking, like, I can bring the data lens to it in my mind and understand the complexity of trying to answer that problem, what it would take to answer, whether it's worth answering in the first place or not. And so
how the question should be structured, all that.
Right. It's right. And or can you get 80% of the answer for 20 or 10% of the costs, that we're going to focus a little bit more on that next year, but that's up for the roadmap. That's what we're going to do.
Okay. Well, I feel like there's probably on your roadmap going forward a lot to do with AI, maybe generative AI. Tell us about what you're looking at, what you're considering or actually doing in that space where data analytics is more on the AI end of that spectrum.
Yeah. So I think the applications, and this just comes from my kind of larger scale experience throughout my career, we're getting, in my opinion anyway, we're getting to the point where appropriate utilization of AI and machine learning can help unlock new value for data-driven companies that are very experimental. Well, what's a better example of that than the biotech industry, right? Where everything we do is fundamentally data-driven. Everything we do is attempting to solve a scientific challenge or a scientific problem. But what I would say is you have to be very choiceful about where you apply those techniques. I think it's very easy to say, well, we've got a bunch of data, we're going to run some AI, it's going to be great. It's
going to be so great when it gets here.
Right. You could follow that path, through the environment and just wind up where you got to at the end of it sometimes. So again, it's applying the strategic perspective of saying, hey, this is a core data problem we're trying to solve. Let's take a look at, will AI models, will machine learning be applicable to that? And, it doesn't have to always be expensive. I was just talking to a team a couple of weeks ago where they had an amazing idea that could unlock a lot of value. And then we turned around and we looked around the environment, and it turned out we actually already had the data, so right. So it's nice. It doesn't have to be a big, complex effort. I think you just got to know where to look.
Yeah. Interesting. How do you make sure that the people on your team or even the outside contractors you're working with are as tied into the business and the commercial side of things? That used to be a conversation we had a lot over the years when I was at CIO Magazine and with CIO.com, where we talk a lot about the business savvy that IT people have. I feel like these days we talk more about the additional digital savvy that the rest of the business needs to have and what the deck role in that is. Talk about that part of it. How do you make sure that the business sensibilities, the commercial way of thinking about IT is as deeply embedded in your team as it is with you as the CTIO?
Yeah, I think it's it's probably two things. Well, it's probably more than two things, but two things come to mind. So
good, that's fine.
The first one is essentially the people that you hire in the first place, right?
Sure.
What we sought to do when we were building out our kind of digital team, our digital innovation team, is brought people onto the team that had experience driving digitization from a business point of view. They actually had roles like that, or even worked in commercial groups in the past, or worked in marketing teams in the past, and then were very curious about digital and got involved in the digital side of it. It might have been even in an IT organization at some point, but that they weren't thinking about it from looking from the IT up. They were thinking about it looking from the business at how we could unlock it with digital data and technology approaches. So again, it's just something I've learned across my career too, that making the right kind of talent choices really is the thing it's critical to driving transformation and culture with your group. So I'd say we're very choiceful about the type of roles that we thought about and who could really drive things from a business perspective. And then to couple that, the second part was, we've located all of those digital capabilities within our team, within DEC. There isn't another digital team. There's not another data engineering team. There's not. You're
not competing with a team that's part of the engineering group.
Correct. Exactly.
Yeah.
And by building that collaboratively with the company the right way, it doesn't become a competition, and it shouldn't become a competition. It's not viewed as that. It's viewed as enabling, right? So I sit in on discussions with our commercial teams and our digital teams, and it's just the level of collaboration, the culture, the ways of work. I'm just always impressed by the teams, because what do they want to do? They want to focus on how can we get this right? How can we get this outcome right? And it's not about who's doing what, anymore.
Yeah.
So,
and I never hear anyone talk these days about, deeply religious choices about what technology we're using. I mean, I feel like everyone has become so ambidextrous on all that.
Yeah, and you have to be, right? And I think, the world evolves, right? Technology will evolve, and what's helping us today, tomorrow we'll make a different choice, and the day after that, maybe not day after that, but after that, we'll make a different choice. Yeah. And again, that's why you could probably tell my focus is from a strategy perspective, like what's the destination we're trying to go to, and why are we trying to get there? And for today, it's this vehicle. Another day, it's another vehicle, but the vehicle's not important as much. It's the destination, So.
Right. It's like 5 years ago, I was talking with CIOs so much about their cloud services strategies. And now it's so built in as a part of strategic approaches to business that we don't spend much time on it. Absolutely. I have another excellent question for the audience, and it's right in line with what we're talking about. Matt, could you expand a bit on the business engagement aspects as part of the journey? And I think we've touched on that a good bit already, but this is your chance to expand on that even more.
Yeah, I'd say it's going to sound maybe odd, but we don't think about it as business engagement, if I'm understanding the question correctly. So we don't think about it as there's the business and there's us, or like that. It's not. Very intentionally, we try not to think about it that way, because we see ourselves as the business. We are the business. We're part of the business. We're infused in the business, and the capabilities and outcomes we're trying to drive are part of our business, right? Like we're not a separate thing that's apart from it. And so, to me, it hasn't been as much about formal engagement models or business partnering models or those things,
or business relationship managers.
Right. It's not really been about that. What it's been about is having the right people and coaching them and mentoring, so that essentially they show up as business leaders. You know what I mean? Yes. And not as providers or whatever other word you might want to use. So that
internal vendors with customers that are in those other departments. It's a whole different way to think about it.
You think about it very, very differently. Yeah. And do we get it right every day? No. But that's that's how we were very intentionally trying to think about it. Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. Now, I know we've taken you away from an all hands meeting, and I promised to get you out of here a little bit early. I have just the last question I wanted to ask you, going from the leadership position in a giant pharmaceutical company to what you're doing now, what has that taught you? What have you learned about your own leadership style in these last 3 years?
Yeah, hopefully it doesn't sound too cliched, but I do feel this. And if you have the opportunity in your career, make sure that, or if you can, that you take opportunities that fit your passion, and because the world is a complex place, and it's not easy every single day, but it's that much harder if you're not as vested in the journey. You know what I mean? So to me, it's drive if you can, right? And you find the opportunities, really try to drive with your passion. I'd say the second piece is get involved with teams that you're going to stretch and that are going to stretch you, right? Because learning both ways is important. And I think the last one maybe is take the work seriously, but maybe don't take yourself so seriously all the time, right?
Good for you. Good for you. Exactly.
That's in a nutshell, I think my key takeaways right now.
All right, good. Well, those are good takeaways indeed. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I wish you, we wish you all the best with the rest of your all hands meeting. I assume they're off somewhere watching you live right now in an auditorium. At least I hope they are.
I believe they are. And
some of them may be tuning in.
And Fran, on behalf of myself and Sage, just thank you so much for the opportunity. It was awesome speaking with you today, and just thanks again.
Well, you too, and you're very welcome indeed. And if you joined us late today, don't worry, you can watch this full episode of my interview here on LinkedIn later in the day, but also on CIO.com and on our YouTube channel. CIO Leadership Live is also available as an audio podcast wherever you find your podcasts. And I hope that you enjoyed and learned from today's conversation with Matt Lasmanis, the Chief Technology and Innovation Officer at Sage Therapeutics, as much as I did. We'll be back again in 2 weeks, and this time I'll be talking on Wednesday, October 25th at noon Eastern with Sheila Anderson, who is the CIO of Aflac, the supplemental insurance provider. Thanks so much for tuning in and joining us today. Thanks to our audience members who sent in questions. They were both excellent. And do take a moment to subscribe to our CIO channel on YouTube, where you can find all 100 plus previous episodes of CIO Leadership Live. Take care out there. Thanks, and we'll see you again next time.